Hey there, I'm Pablo RAL, a ski mountaineering coach, and welcome to the Global SKIMO YouTube channel. Today we're going to relive the first competition I did, the season 2021 Tour 2022, which was the Sprint Spanish Cup in Sierra Nevada. So, let's go to the qualifying round, where I went out knowing I didn't need a great time to make it to the quarterfinals. Therefore, I decided to do it at an intensity that was by no means maximum, ensuring I didn't use any of that anaerobic capacity. How important it would be later not to waste any energy, so I took it as I finished the warm-up at a pace slightly above the anaerobic threshold, but not much more, with a good rhythm. Feeling strong, I noticed that my legs were rested, I had made a good preparation, and above all, a good tapering, arriving at the competition without fatigue after so many months of hard training. I took advantage of the flatter section to glide and save energy, being as efficient as possible, because the goal of this first round wasn't more but better. Get a feel for the track and make a decent average time, because then the qualifying time is what's considered for the quarterfinals, but my goal was by no means to have the best times in this qualifying round. In fact, if you notice, little by little, the greyhounds that were in pursuit were catching up from behind, and I also started from the back with Lex, Pau Cole, and Oriol Cardona behind me, and bit by bit they were closing in and catching up to second place. Additionally, during this round, I reflected on how well I was breathing at 2,300 meters, thanks again to focusing well on the training sessions in the previous weeks. And focused on making good transitions and especially making sure I didn't fall on the way down. I got behind Alex, who had overtaken me during the transition, and he was marking the descent so I could see if any gates were tighter or there were any obstacles. And it was very helpful for me to make the descent safely and calmly without any issues, so as not to make any mistakes. I reached the finish line and got in the ranking. I was in 17th place in terms of qualifying times, and this caused me to fall into the quarterfinals, with 3 people having a better time than I had in that qualifying round. And as you all know, in the quarterfinals, only the top 2 advance. Especially with the time I had in qualifying, I had to secure that second spot. And it wasn't easy at all, because I was up against Albert Perret, Miguel Anton, and Jung, who all had better times than me. So, in my quarterfinal round, I went out leading. I wanted to take the position. From the beginning, to avoid surprises, I took the diamonds on the right, setting the pace along with Albert Perret, who was on the opposite side. We were parallel, elbow to elbow, controlling the rate, not at full speed, but at a high pace, with which to start marking differences and thus secure that first or second position. Coming out of the last diamond, I saw that Albert and I were both heading to the same area, and that he might try to close me off at the transition entrance, so I just eased up a little to avoid any conflict there, and I paced myself just right to stay on his wheel, reach the transition together, make a good change, and head out together again for the next boot packing, where I stayed on his wheel. He was setting the pace, and I knew I couldn't let myself go. I was in second place, but I knew that behind me, both Miguel Anton and Ion would push hard, because they both wanted to be in the semifinals, and I wasn't satisfied with just that. So I pushed a bit harder during the transition to try to arrive at the same time as Albert, and we met right there with Miguel Anton. And I already thought that everything wasn't set in stone and we had to earn that second place. We left the transition together. Miguel started running, and seeing him, I also started running with my skis, setting the pace, always making sure Miguel didn't overtake me. Trying not to use too much energy, but I had to secure my place in the semifinals. I reached the upper transition in second position, and with a skin change, feeling all the pressure in the world, because if I took 1 second longer than Miguel and he got ahead, I'd be literally out of the semifinals. I made a good transition, grabbed the poles quickly, and pushed ahead of Miguel Anton. And initially on the descent, I was calm but focused, because any mistake could leave me out. When making the last stretch, that 180-degree turn to enter the skating section, I saw that I had some margin over Miguel, and I was able to make it to the finish line relatively calmly with that automatic pass to the semifinals. And on top of that, Miguel managed to be the lucky loser. And because they were one of the best third place, he also made it to the semifinals. These semifinals were like a final. I mean, the level this year was incredible, and you had to be among the top 3 to make it to that final, which was my goal. I started a bit conservative, drafting behind Alex, and just at the diamonds, in one of the direction changes, he lost his ski. So I became the one leading that line of diamonds and was there in second or third place, along with Oriol Cardona and Nico, who started very strong. They pulled away a bit, but well, I had that third place where I was. It was enough for me to pass to the final, and I definitely didn't want to get into that fight for the top spot of the round. I just wanted to save energy as much as possible to hold on to that third place. But I was also aware that Alex could come on strong from behind, despite having lost the skis, and that Albert Perret, knowing his physiology, might end up joining the group we were in. And joining the party, I came out of the hike in third place, got behind Nico, and instead of easing off, I tried to keep up with him. At that moment, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Albert running at an incredible speed, coming up parallel to us, so I pushed even harder. I lined up next to Nico, and the 3 of us reached the transition together just as Oriol Cardona was leaving at that change. I was the slowest, which made me come out 4th in the transition. At that moment, I was out of the final and I got really angry. I started running with everything I had, putting in an effort I had worked on in training later on. That intensity, being able to push a bit more. I progressed, passed Nico, kept progressing, passed Albert, and got into second place. That's how I entered the transition to remove skins. But I arrived very tired and didn't make my best transition. So Albert got ahead of me and left the transition before I did. Still, I managed to leave in third place, and now once again I was in a position that assured me a spot in the finals. But I knew Nico was coming from behind and wanted to get into the final too. So I had to stay focused and descend very carefully. And suddenly, in one of the turns, I hear Nico's skis, see his shadow, and the next thing I know, he's shoulder to shoulder with me. We collided just as I was closing in to pass the gate, since I was taking a high line. Nico touched the door with his ski, hit the ground, tumbled over. And honestly, I never lost my position at any moment. I was very stable, and I came in third after a very high level round where I spent a lot of energy. To tell you the truth, it was a bittersweet feeling, as I was very happy to have made it to the final, being already among the top 6, and this year has undoubtedly been the highest level sprint I've ever done. But on the other hand, I had that clash with Nico, my friend. Also, last year we had already competed for a spot in the final between the two of us, and it's not my favorite way to advance to the next round. Even so, after talking with some teammates, I felt relieved, as the clash with Nico and me was completely clean and sportsmanlike. This is a competition, and in the 20 minutes we have between rounds, I was moving around, trying to recover from that maximal effort in the semi-final. And focus and prepare myself to fight against the best in that final round. I'm going to tell you the record because it deserves mention. There was Oriol Cardona, the world runner-up of the sprint, Paul Cole, bronze hopeful in the Sprint World Championship, Albert Perez, runner-up in the Vertical Junior World Championship, Íñigo Martínez, with several top 5 finishes in the World Cup Sprint, Diego de la Peña, also from the Spanish team, and with several top 10 finishes in the World Cup. And yours truly, your trusted YouTuber. It started very strong, with Oriol leading the group, eager to be at the front. Diego de la Peña came out very strong on his wheels, and Pau too. So I got behind them and let them set the pace. Just at the same spot where Alex lost his ski, Oriol did too. But he managed to put it back on very quickly, and within a few seconds, he was back on track. Honestly, he made a great recovery. Unbelievable. For a moment, I was in 3rd or 4th position alongside Íñigo, and suddenly Oriol passed us like a flash, but lost his ski again, and I kept holding on to that 4th place. The podium was starting to slip away a bit. I kept pushing hard, and honestly I felt great because I recovered quite well, despite giving my all in the quarterfinals and semifinals, which is something I hadn't achieved in other years, so without a doubt the training was paying off. During the transition, I didn't make my best change either, and then suddenly Oriol Cardona passed us flying. I kept fighting with all my strength. Maybe I was far from the podium, but 4th place was still up for grabs. We reached the transition together, Diego, Albert and I, and Uri was still coming out of it. There again, I didn't make a big change. Albert and Diego left a couple of seconds earlier, and I was in 6th place and remembered all these months training alone, feeling the anger from people who didn't believe in me. I started running, even though I had no strength left to try and improve my best result in the sprint. I ran, and managed to get into 5th position, overtaking Diego. But 5 steps before the transition, my legs gave out. I remember those last 5 steps as being completely empty of strength. I entered the transition very tired in 5th position. And in the midst of so much effort, I was really slow in storing the skins, and Diego got ahead of me. So I ended up coming out 6th in this transition, and it was already difficult on the downhill, especially with how tired I was, to gain any positions with the lead Diego had. So, well, I enjoyed it, went down hugging the gates, and I'm very satisfied to have fought with the best in the Spanish Cup sprint, which also gives me a lot of motivation to keep training hard for the upcoming sprints,